So, Chris, what has Brett been doing during this summer? I heard there's some exciting things going on. There's some really good news. What's going on with Brett during the summer?
That's an excellent question, Noel. We have had an exciting few weeks. When Brett looked at our ongoing campaigns, affordable housing, elder care, municipal ID, juvenile justice, gun violence, and jobs, we realized that each of them in some way addressed systemic racism in Central Ohio. We also realized that the next step that we needed to make further progress in these campaigns was to get a meeting with the mayor, Andrew Ginther.
Wow. So we're talking about Brett's proven solutions that we need to bring before the mayor, which will bring about real change, like real change now.
Real change now, exactly, Noel. So Brett started a campaign to get our message out that we need real change now. We've had 6 events over the last 6 Tuesdays, each highlighting one or more of our campaigns. We've heard powerful testimony from people affected by these issues, in some cases now more than ever due to the pandemic, which has only heightened the existing inequalities in our community. We've also heard Brett's plans to address these problems, and we invited Mayor Ginther to meet with Brett so that together we could make real change now.
So how'd that go?
It went well, Wes. Here are some videos from the events. You can find the full video of each event on Brett's Facebook page.
Last year, you heard me share my brother-in-law's story at the Nehemiah action. Then shortly after the action, my wife passed away. I ended up homeless. I was at the Volunteers of America shelter for veterans. Me being a vet, they were able to contact the affordable housing partners that had set aside apartments for veterans. If it wasn't for that they set aside units, I would still be there. There's no such thing as $400 or $600 apartments, but that's what people need. Many families are out there struggling. I am so happy to be a part of Bread as an advocate for affordable housing. More families can benefit because I saw the benefits.
Before the pandemic, we were concerned about the housing needs of thousands of low-income families struggling to access and retain safe, decent, affordable housing. We have been pressing for more housing solutions since 2018. 54,000 low-income families in Franklin County have to spend more than half of their incomes on a place to live. This is awful. You might ask, didn't Columbus City Council pass $3 million for emergency housing? And the answer is yes. They did this in the month of May. That $3 million won't last forever. But guess what? Last night, they proposed another $7 million. So now we have $10 million for housing assistance, just exactly what we were working for, and we were surprised. Woo! For the long term, we want to meet with Mayor Ginther to move our housing plan forward. We started working on this plan with Councilmember Favor. This plan would encourage developers to set aside 20% of new housing units for families that make less than $42,000 a year. Why? We see all types of housing being built across Columbus, but it is not affordable to families that make less than $42,000 a year. Cities across the country are ensuring that families with low incomes can access new housing developments by encouraging developers to set aside some of the units they're building. Don Brown's testimony that we just had shows us that this is possible. And finally, if you are a Columbus voter, you might remember that we approved $50 million in bond money for affordable housing strategy last year. We want to see the city issue those bonds immediately and send that money to the Affordable Housing Trust. The Affordable Housing Trust already has a pipeline of affordable housing developments that they can move forward with immediately. if the city would only release those funds.
My name is Pastor June Wilkins, and I'm on Bread's Elder Care Steering Committee. Over the last 2 years, we have been mortified by the reality that here in Franklin County, there is a 27 gap in life expectancy from zip code to zip code. That means members of our community are literally dying 27 years sooner, depending on where they live. In Ohio as a whole, the gap is 29 years. And what is terrifying is that it's projected that by 2030, the number of adults over 60 is going to rise by 33.4%. We don't have time to wait. People's lives are hanging in the balance. We need real change now. The Kirwan Institute shared with us their study and vulnerability map, which at the time only showed a 20-year gap. Take a moment to look at the color coding for Franklin County. Notice how the most vulnerable areas are in red, representing a life expectancy of 64 to 71 years old, while those in blue represent those living on an average of 81 to 84 years. So for example, if you were to live in Linden, in the 43211 zip code like Lois over here, your average life expectancy is about 64 years old. While if we just drive 15 minutes over to the 43212 zip code where John lives in Grandview, your life expectancy is about 84 years. This is unacceptable. Imagine a city where paramedics wouldn't have as many frequent 911 calls for older folks because they were already plugged into services they needed. Imagine a city where every fire station had a social worker to follow up on those cases, where every senior, regardless of where they live, was connected and cared for equally by our community. That is what Bread's vision is, and that is why we need Mayor Ginther to meet with us to help achieve that goal.
In late 2015, Bread formed the One ID Columbus Coalition in order to push for the implementation of a municipal ID program for Columbus. ICO's been glad to be a part of this effort. One ID Columbus brings together 11 diverse Columbus organizations made up of workers, the elderly, the homeless, undocumented immigrants, foster children, victims of domestic violence, and others, as well as faith communities like ours. Before the pandemic, we saw these populations struggle to access opportunities in our city. They may have been unable to enter their child's public school building, access a food pantry, visit hospitalized loved ones, pick up a prescription, or interact confidently with law enforcement officers. Now those struggles have changed and have gotten worse. In today's era of COVID-19, the lack of a legal ID could even lead to death due to either fear of consequences of coming forward or the actual absence of an access to care. These struggles result from the difficulty or the inability to obtain traditional forms of identification. We have found across the country that local governments in several communities have been able to help vulnerable residents like these by issuing their own municipal ID cards, which are accessible to all residents. Municipal ID cards are secure photo ID cards issued by local governments. Dozens of communities have these ID programs, including New Haven, New York City, San Francisco, Chicago, and Philadelphia, and many others. In 2015, we secured the support from the Columbus City Council. Legislation was drafted and a City Council-sponsored feasibility study was completed last year. The study estimates that between 81,000 and 100,000 Columbus residents do not have valid ID. And the city sponsored this for a cost of $9,500, which to date has brought no return to the city. We know that the City Council has declared racism a public crisis. This is true. The feasibility study for a municipal ID program in Columbus estimates that at least 41,000 African Americans in Columbus are likely to be without ID. You just heard from the elder care communities. This problem impacts seniors as well. The feasibility study notes that sometimes seniors rely on Medicare or their Social Security card as a form of identification. However, these cards do not include the photo or address of the cardholder, which places significant limitations on their usefulness. We've even heard testimonies from seniors about the difficulty of gathering the documentation to obtain a state-issued identification card. Local ID cards could help solve this problem by making the process easier and more accessible for seniors. Mayor Ginter, One ID Columbus wants to meet with you as we collaborate with BRED and the organizations involved in our coalition to get this ID program set up. 5 years have gone by without a municipal ID program. We need help to solve this problem. We need real change now.
In Pittsburgh City Schools, suspensions dropped by 36% after they implemented restorative practice. So we arranged a trip to Pittsburgh with Columbus City Schools, administrators, board members, union representatives, and we came back prepared to push for restorative practice training in our school district. So far, our 2018 Nehemiah action, at our 2018 Nehemiah action, we had the school board president commit to the training of over 100 staff and to work with BRED on a plan to monitor and support these efforts. Since then, we have continued our relationship with the district, co-hosting a restorative practice summit and meeting with most of the schools who have had the training. Our teachers in Columbus City Schools shared that after implementing restorative practice in her classroom, one of the teachers, she would check in with the class each morning. They called it a temperature check. Because of doing the morning temperature checks, she found out that one of her students was suicidal and was able for them to get the support they needed. Restorative practice literally saved this child's life. BRED's goal is to create a school district that puts relationships first so that learning, respect for one another, and good behavior can follow. We don't want to see kids being pushed into the school to prison pipeline. We want to make sure that they are redirected and understand the impact of their actions so that they can make better choices. We want them to return to the classroom after an incident and repair any harm they caused so that the entire class can move forward. We saw it happen in Pittsburgh School District. We saw it happen in Detroit's neighborhoods. And we are seeing it reshape cities all across the DART network where organizations like BRED are fighting to give children second chances through diversion programs and restorative practice. So when school is back in session, when this pandemic begins to lift and life changes, we want our cities to rise up, restored. The only way this happens is by continuing to push for that vision, to push for more funding for restorative practice, to push for more support for teachers and staff. We don't want to lose momentum from the amazing groundwork that has been laid. Our committee promises we will continue our relationship with the school board, Superintendent Talisa Dixon, and other Columbus City administrators to lay out a plan for the future.
The true mystery, at least for our officials and law enforcement, seems to be how to stop the violence. The solution is really simple. It's been used for over 30 years. What you do, you put all your resources together and you target the most violent groups with a clear and unified message. The violence must stop. It is estimated that one shooting in Ohio cost the community nearly $3 million.
With the radio?
The problem in our community is that we have failed to use our resources wisely. Historically, agencies in Columbus working to reduce violence have not played well together. The police want to arrest. The prosecutors want to prosecute. The judges want to judge. The social service community wants to provide services. All the while, the church community continues to pray for those lost to gun violence. The cities that are winning the fight to reduce gun violence are doing so by getting all of these agencies to come together with a clear focus on known violent groups, sending a unified message to those groups to end the violence, and a unified strategy to get these groups to listen. It's referred to as Group Violence Intervention, or GVI, and it is not another program. We have enough of those, and still we're on pace for the most violent year here in Columbus history. In 2015, the Columbus Department of Safety committed to BRED to replicate the GVI strategies. The department successfully brought together all of the key players, the police, the judges, the prosecutors, both county and federal, the Urban League, and the faith community. This effort is now called the Safe Neighborhoods Initiative, and it has been viewed as a success. It has successfully impacted the roughly 30 known violent offenders who participated, but it has drastically missed the mark, impacting the larger violent groups. More importantly, the initiative has failed to reduce violence and murders because it has not been implemented with fidelity. It has become clear to BRED that if the Safe Neighborhood Initiative is to succeed in the larger goal of reducing violence, we need an outside expert to guide us. We need a coach to give us the right game plan to win. Our research has led us to that coach. The National Network for Safe Communities, or NNSC, has over 20 years of success working with cities across the country to reduce gang and gun violence. In a few minutes, Mary Counter will share with you our plan for real change now that depends on bringing the NNSC to Columbus to train and guide our community leaders in tried and tested methods for reducing violence.
Their vision is very different from what we've seen in other neighborhoods that the city has revitalized. Neighborhoods like Wineland Park, Franklinton, and Old Town East, where my synagogue has stood for nearly 100 years. In those neighborhoods, housing costs have skyrocketed, driving out longtime residents. Those changes have happened because of city policies, such as tax incentives to companies who build expensive housing, retail, and office space, with no effort to bring safe, affordable housing, living wage jobs, and other needs to the community. Revitalization should not mean relocation. Do you agree? We found a way to begin reversing the impact of 100 or more years of economic and racial suffocation, harnessing the huge purchasing power of large anchor institutions, hospitals, universities, the city itself, to purchase goods and services from businesses created in these neighborhoods and owned by the workers who live there. With OSU's help, we acquired technical assistance from 2 national experts to guide us through a process in developing the initial business that will employ people from Linden who have criminal records or other barriers to livable wage jobs. Employees will have the opportunity to become worker owners, so that in addition to having a decent job with benefits, they will begin building wealth for their families. In Cleveland, worker owners in the 3 businesses started by Evergreen Cooperatives are now able to buy homes, afford health care, and save for retirement. Mayor Ginther could be a true champion for this new way to build wealth. In Rochester, New York, and other cities across the country, local government leaders have become champions of worker-owned businesses for economically suffocated neighborhoods. Mayor Ginther made a promise to the residents of Linden to listen to the ideas of the community and bring real change now.
Wow, Chris, that is like so exciting. Some of the stuff that you just showed me, oh my goodness, this is so exciting. So these things were called Justice Tuesday, where bread came out and different people came out. I heard a lot of horns blowing in some of the clips you did. That is so exciting, Chris.
Well, it is very exciting. And what's even more exciting is that since we've kept up the pressure, we were able to finally schedule a meeting with Mayor Ginther.
I'm really excited about that because I saw all this enormous energy that was so powerful over the course of the summer, of focusing on the terrible problems of systemic racism. And I always worried that my voice wouldn't be added in a way that was useful. This meeting and the work that Brett has done really sort of takes that energy and turns it into something that actually moves mountains.
Absolutely, Wes. I mean, this meeting with the mayor is just a first step. It's an important first step, for he had refused to meet with us for all these years. But we know we're going to have to, that this is just the beginning, and we're going to have to keep the pressure up.
Well, how can we get to be part of that or see it or something?
So the meeting with the mayor is going to be on September 3rd at 3 p.m. If you're interested in attending as an observer, because Brett will have spokespeople chosen, you need to send an email to Brett at breadcolumbus@gmail.com. And you're going to need to attend the pre-meeting at 2 p.m. on September 3rd. This will make sure that everyone's on the same page for how the meeting is supposed to go.
So where will it be?
It'll be online, like so many things in this period.
Okay.
So if I want to go now, I got to send an email to where again, Chris? Where do I need to send my email to?
Send it to breadcolumbus@gmail.com.
Wow, this sounds exciting. Doesn't it sound exciting, Wesley?
This is very exciting. I love the fact that this takes its energy and puts it into a form that actually applies itself to the problem, puts its shoulder to the wheel, lets us put our shoulders to the wheel.
But that will really be just the first step with Ginther. And we will be having a listening process following
up on the progress we've made so far.
Right. And looking to what the problems are that people are dealing with on a one-to-one basis.
Mm-hmm.
We'll be scheduling those later in the month.
When we have more information available in the listening process, we'll make it available through the church's website, social media, and weekly emails. You can also talk to any of us on First You Use Bread team if you want to get involved.
Wow, so I guess really bread
rises.